Okay, so today we're very honored to have two women in media who have broken the mold of this male-dominated industry in Japan. They are pioneers. I'm sure you all recognize their faces immediately, Maoko Kotani and Yuko Ando. Kotani-san is the longest-serving anchor on a TV business news show in Japanese broadcast history. She's been in TV for 24 years. She's now the anchor of Broadcast Satellite Japan's nightly business news program called Nikkei Plus 10. She was previously the anchor of TV Tokyo's nightly World Business Satellite for 16 years. Ando-san has been working at Fuji Television since 1980, anchoring a variety. Oh, TBS, oh, sorry. Fuji Television, what? 87, okay, excuse me, sorry about that. Okay, 35 years. All right. Okay, anyway, at Fuji Television, she's been anchoring a variety of live news programs. Some of her coverage has included the Polish Solidarity Movement in 1981, the People's Power Revolution in the Philippines in 1986, the 1991 Gulf War, and the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake. So please welcome Maoko Kotani and Yuko Ando. So, which one would you like to speak first? Do you want to go first? Okay.
Well, thank you very much for such a nice introduction, and I feel deeply honored to be here and speaking in front of you. And at HCCJ, I'm always, usually at your side, sitting at the other side and asking questions. But today, I'm sitting at this table. I never imagined myself sitting at this table and answering the questions. I feel like a fish out of water today. Anyway, 35 years ago, I started my career as a little plastic flower in the TV news show. I'll explain what really means later on. Actually, I started my TV career as an assistant in Japanese, assistant. Who was, of course, assistant is a quite unique profession invented and fostered by the Japanese culture, which admires women who walks 3 steps behind men. As an assistant about 35 years ago in the TV news show, I was just sitting beside main anchorman and nodding and saying hi, hi. Every time he said something, no matter I understood what he said or not. So I was just there. And I would always assimilate or equate this assistant job to a plastic yellow chrysanthemum you can find at the top of a sashimi slice bag, like a supermarket. It's there. It makes look sashimi a little better, but not edible. So the significance of yellow plastic chrysanthemum is just a presence. No further existence was expected. So I was at the age of 20 and still going to Sophia University. So be precise about that, I was a part-time yellow chrysanthemum in the TV news show. That was my start of my TV career. And the first assignment as a news reporter was given 6 months later. That was to interview the secretary of LBP without an appointment. The reason why all of a sudden I was assigned to that toughest interview, I think I assumed the director of the program might have felt a little pity on me, the girl just sitting, smiling, and nodding without saying anything in the TV. At that time, Chief Secretary was Mr. Shin Kanemaru, who was very well known by how much he hated TV and TV cameras. For him, only printing media was worthwhile to spare his time. Actually, he was not photogenic anyway, and he knew it. I had had no experience to interview politicians or anybody else at that time. It was the first TV interview assignment in my life. I asked the reason why me, to the director. You wouldn't believe what he said in the next moment. He said, reason why? Just because politicians like women. So isn't that so simple? It is too bad I can't go into more details about this interesting conversation since the time is limited today. But eventually I went to Mr. Kanemaru's residence and succeeded to draw a few words from him. When the director found out that, and he said, you can imagine that. See, I told you, politicians like women. This true non-fiction story tells you a lot about what was really happening in the TV media, in Japanese TV media about 35 years ago. Since then, I tried my best not to act like a woman. In other words, I tried to hide femininity. I tried to conform to the behavior of the members of a traditional boys' club. I decided that I would not allow anyone to say that just because I was a woman, I could do something. I wouldn't allow myself to excuse just because I am a woman, I can't do that, or I cannot do that. As I mentioned, conformity to men's society was a very important element, or I should say tactics, for me to continue TV career. I should say, in order to survive in the Japanese TV media, to conform myself to the behavior of the traditional boys' club was very important and useful. More specifically, I did not allow myself to excuse for not being able to do something just because I was a woman. I did not hesitate to accept any sort of assignments. War, riots, earthquakes, airplane accidents, and so forth. I thought I had to prove I could do just about everything as good as men could do, or even better. However, being a woman in TV media, I think there are two dangerous pitfalls. First, overestimation. I still remember when I came back from the assignment of Gulf War, I was asked to hold a press conference. You can imagine why, the reason. Just because I was the only Japanese woman at the war site. But there are a lot of women journalists out there from all over the world, but not Japanese. That's the only reason I had to have a press conference like that from the Gulf War. That's obviously the overestimation. I was doing the same thing as male journalists, the Japanese male journalists at the war site, but only me, I had to have a press conference just because I was a woman. That's what I'm saying of the overestimation. And there are always some preposition of a woman, like the first woman main newscaster, the first woman TV reporter interviewing president, such, and never get used to it. And the second pitfall is underestimation of women's capability by women themselves. The tendency of underestimation is deeply connected to the Japanese traditional value toward the Japanese woman. As I mentioned at the beginning of this speech, women should walk 3 steps behind men, and being a good wife and a mother in the first place. Women should be a sweet existence under the protection by men. In this sense, Also, women in TV should behave like an ideal sweet assistant or supporting to the king. Women themselves believe they should behave like that. Otherwise, they will not be accepted by the viewers. Their underestimation of the capability of women by themselves, that really banning them from saying what they want to say. By the way, I am now writing a dissertation, my PhD, and the subject is about the Japanese women in Congress, finding the reason why the number of women politicians is so small. Through the research for this dissertation, I found a very interesting study done by the US political scientists, namely Jennifer Lawless and Richard Fox. The book called It Still Takes a Candidate. And this study made thorough research of eligible candidates of 3,800 men and women to acquire an answer why women eligible candidates are less likely to climb up career ladder to all the way to the top, which means Congress. The conclusion is surprisingly simple. The most eligible candidate women who gave up on climbing ladder all the way to the top, they say, I am not just qualified, which is underestimation. The underestimation by women themselves is also, I think, deep-rooted in the United States as well. I am now at the age of 55. I don't have to really confess about my age, but I'm now at the age of 55 and no longer kawaii anyway. So may have to find alternative tactics to survive through in the Japanese TV media. If you have any suggestion, I am very more welcome to hear that. And I'll take any sort of questions about the media. Thank you very much.
How about beautiful and brilliant? How about that? Okay, Marcus, Kotani-san, dozo.
Wow, what a great speech. Actually, I feel the same way. We're no longer kawaii age. And, but I think Yuko-san, Ando-san, she has this acknowledge, she has this experience, and there's a lot to admire. And that should be much more praised rather than kawaii, well, though it's a culture. And today, I would like to present myself of two major themes. And one is of trends of TV industries now in Japan. And then the gender. The first, I can't make great jokes like you now. so That's true. Sorry about that. Okay. Yes, as I had a great introduction. Thank you. I have spent. Well, I have been in this industry for. This is my 25th year, and the first 8 years, I committed myself to general news rather than business. I did part of it, but still, it was overall general news. So what you have to do was you had to commit to politics, you had to commit to all the issues that relates to international matters and anything that comes up domestic-wise too. But then it was after 8 years, then I was about to think that maybe this job is not the right one for me. The reason why was that I'm sure Ando-san have gone through tough times, going through wars, and I was the same way. I felt the same way. With the general news, you have to go through all the events which you would shed tears, and with lots of people's pain and lots of people's death. For example, I should start off from maybe after 8 years of my experience. No, actually 4 years of my experience. I went to Bosnia, and first I stayed there for 1 month, and that was right in the middle of war. And first I couldn't go direct to Belgrade, and so what I did was I went to Hungary and went south, and then got into Belgrade and made all the appointments, and then I went to Pale to meet with Mr. Radovan Karadzic, who was president of Serbia at the moment, at that time, and still in Sarajevo, the snipers were there and shooting each other, and so that was actually the border of the war. And Pale was a bit away from Sarajevo, and there he was there. So I went there and I met him, and I was waiting because I wanted to interview him, and so I went through the security, and what I was so shocked was that he was watching. Okay, let me explain this first. On the Serbian side, actually the Russia was backing up, and the other side, it was Croatian and Muslims, and the U.S. and German was backing up. And so it was, as I went in to his room, he was watching CNN News, which means that it's enemies' sources that he was watching, and he was giving orders to the battlefield. And I was very, very shocked, and I could see how the medias could lead to make the war worsen. Anyway, so I really said to myself, oh well, the media's role is very, very significant in this world. And then at that time we didn't have internet, so after I came back, well, you know, I had to go through all the. It was really tough to collect all the sources to write my article at that time to Bunge Shuju, which is a monthly political magazine, and so from Serbia's side to go to the other side, it took me like all the way to Vienna, and then from Vienna I had to cleanse myself, because I was told that I might be assassinated if not. So I went to UN, and then I did, and then I went down to Croatia, and then I interviewed this lady. She was captive with Serbians, which was enemy for them, and she was holding a little baby in her arms. And I was really impressed. I was really happy to know that she was married after, you know, I mean, she was avoiding the war, the battlefield, obviously. So I was really happy to know that she's happy now. But actually, she wasn't. She was captured with 5 other girls, and as soon as they got pregnant, they were released, because it's ethnic cleansing. So that's what it happens. And but then I said, well, so you now got married, so you have a baby. You must be happy. Then she said, no, this is actually the baby that I had then. And I said, well, it must have been, you must have gone through real hard times. And she said, yes. She really went through the tough times, whether to deliver the baby or not. But then after she had the baby, she said that you know, she's still well, he's a loved one, and so even if she does struggle after that, she wouldn't. She said that she wouldn't care. You know, she would go through it with the baby, and that was really that broke my heart. And at the same time, I was really impressed. And at the same time, I thought the role of media is very, very important. But it was such a stress for me, because that was only one event, and to be a journalist is that it comes through with you have to come along with all of those struggles, inner side of you, and it wasn't just the war. there was a debris floor in Kagoshima Prefecture, and I had this man. He lost his family, 5 of them, and his house were covered up with the debris floor, and he could not go in because all the muds were, covered up with the house, and so you can't even go in. And so our staff, our crew, said to the leader of that village, saying that, well, for a week we can wait for that gentleman to interview. Well, we can at least stay there for a week. And so we waited, and then the very last day, when we were about to leave, he said that he is willing to accept. And I was kind of willing that he would come out with the words that he would like the administration to correct some of the systems of the what do you call it, the damu to be done, well done, so that way it wouldn't collapse. But that wasn't what came out of his mouth. We went over to his house, and he led to this table with covered up with white cloth, and on top of it there was this randosu, which is a school bag for girls, which was red color, and inside there was this paper, a sheet of paper. The title was Okasan, written by his daughter. And I couldn't, as I was reading, I had to read it before we actually shoot the interview. And it really made me shed the tears, and I couldn't just go forward. And, well, I can't show on the camera, that I had my tears going down. So I had my camera right behind me, and, sort of like squeeze out my voice to ask the questions. And then I asked my staff to make sure that you edit it and cut it off my question part later on. So after that, we had the copy of that, and then we brought it back to Tokyo, and I put the narration. I did the narration of it, and then tried to not put my emotions into it, because I knew that the audience would be pretty hesitant to see. Our show is very much emotional about this event. And so that was really, I had so much of a stress through that, and as well as earthquake in Hanshin Awaji district in '95, actually, way back. And you know that there's a person that is underneath the closet and trying hard to breathe, and you have to. There's nothing you can do about it, and that was really tough. And another terrorism, the subway terrorism was striking the whole so many people at that time. That was in '95. That was right out. So all of these events really stressed me out, and so after 8 years, I was ready to quit my job, and just about around that time, I got the offer from World Business Satellite, which was a business news, and I was very happy to know that I had an offer, but I had to anchor, and I never anchored before. But then it was, they accepted me as if I'm not a woman, and which was really comforting. And through this past 16 years, I felt like we have accomplished something. That business news stands out, and it's categorized another from general news. And I felt like that was actually something that I was looking for. And plus, I didn't have to go through the events with the sadness. And that was really, that meant something to me. It was more of a joy, because you give all the information that would lead people to happiness or like how to invest and how to make the cash flows go more smooth. Anyway, so all of these. So I was really happy to accept this offer, but about the trend of this TV industry, I have this pity feeling lately that somehow there's no, I don't know, this is on the record, right? So I should be very, very careful. Well, it's really, I think we have to focus more on the audience's ratings. And in order to do so, we have to please the audience. And, the news programs doesn't necessarily, please the audience, because it's the fact. But gradually, there was a trend in each TV stations that the news programs have turned to more of an entertainment shows, and I really didn't like it in a way, because I see myself that entertainment is something to make people laugh and make laugh. But with the news programs, that's something with the fact, and it includes people's death and sorrows, and it's something that you have to face it really seriously. But whereas I think it's a trend not only in Japan, maybe some other countries as well, but that's what I've heard. And so the mixture of those. So you see this entertainment and news, and there's something that comes right in between, and they have created some shows that goes right in between. And so what happened was entertainment. Those people who are working for entertainment shows could come into this area field and go back and forth, and plus news people people could come into that middle field and then go back and forth. And so I was after my 16 years of business news show, I was asked to do either the middle category or the entertainment category, and neither one I didn't want to do. I know that once you go there, you can't come back to the news. And maybe, in the TV industries, that is something that is allowed to, sure, why not? But with the audience, once you see someone in the entertainment field, why could they go back to news field? I mean, that was my question the whole time. And so I really hope that terrestrial channels would realize that someday, and will try to sort of correct their path in the near future. About the gender, lucky me, I guess because I'm so neutral. Not in the sense of I didn't have to make myself like I have to force myself to be like a man, or have to be close like how they act or how they present themselves. It was more of a natural that I was neutral, and then the people around you and the co-workers, they become natural as well and neutral as well. And so I think Yuko-san was more of a pioneer, and because she made the path, it made it easier for us, the juniors. So I really admire her. I mean, she's actually, I think Ando-san and Kunya-san and Sakurai-san, those three are the pioneers, and I really admire them. And plus, she's been with the news industries for such a long time, and I don't know if I can go along with it. I'm trying to make my history as well. So I guess that's about it. Thank you. I couldn't make you laugh, sorry.
All right, thank you so much. All right. floor to questions. The working press gets priority. Please state your name and your affiliation, your media affiliation. It's not on.
It's not on? Oh.
Okay, take it any day.
Siegfried Gill, freelancer from Germany. Mrs. Kotani, I was very impressed by your statement about how you made, say, walking in Bosnia would make your emotional stress. And I think men wouldn't talk in this way. I think this is the difference. What a woman's talking and men talking. Men would never talk about their emotional stress.
Really?
Yeah, I think so. And I think perhaps we need more this kind of talk in the media. But no, my question to both of you is
Why men doesn't talk in that way?
oh, I think they have to be strong. They don't to show your their feelings. It's not a man cannot do it. Yeah.
They share the same feeling.
Maybe the Frenchmen are different. German men and Frenchmen are different. Okay.
Yeah, so, I think in Japan too. So my question to both of you is: in Europe, public institutions like TV or media, public media like NHK in Germany, we have also this kind, or in universities in Germany, we have a kind of a quota system that brings that the owner of the media or the university is obliged to have perhaps 30 or 40% of women. So what do you think about to introduce a kind of quota system in the media? or a kind of other public institution in Japan?
ここから日本語ということにしたいと思います。よろしくお願いします。今、クオータ制の話があったんですけれども、私はさっきも申し上げたように、なぜ日本の国会議員はこんなに女性国会議員が少ないのかという、PhD の論文を書いていまして、その中で一番問題になるのはやはりクオータ制です。
So I would like to speak in Japanese from now, if you will permit. The question was, of course, about the quota system, and as I mentioned in my presentation, I am now writing my PhD dissertation on the fact of why the number of women within the Japanese Diet or Japanese Congress is so low. And of course, the quota system becomes a very key issue in this field.
国会にクオータ制を導入するかどうかについては、私はぜひとも導入するべきだというふうに思っているんですけれども、メディアの中にもそれを導入するべきじゃないかというご意見については非常に新鮮な驚きを覚えました。
So in regards to whether there should be a quota system in place for women within the parliament in Japan, I believe that this kind of system should be introduced. But the question of how this would relate to the media was something actually quite fresh and surprising for me.
ただそのクオータ制自体にいつもこれ議論になるところなんですけど、逆差別というふうな側面もあると思うんですね。優秀でその人がそのメディアの仕事に向いていれば、それは男性だろうが女性だろうがその人がそこにいる意味が存在する意味があるというふうに思うので、女性を何割というふうにクオータ制をメディアに導入するということについてはどうなんでしょうかね。私はまだまだ議論の余地があるんじゃないかなというふうに思います。ただ
And so in regards for the quota system, this is of course an issue which is often debated, can also be seen as a form of reverse discrimination in a sense as well. And of course we should be looking at the capacity or the skill of an individual, so whether they are male or female within the media, if they have something to contribute, if they have the skills and capacity to do that, then they should be having the presence there, they should be there. So in regards to the question of having a quota in place for the media, I think this is something which can still be open for further discussion and investigation.
現状を申し上げますと、This is on the record フジテレビに限らず、多分どこのテレビ局も成績の順番で社員を採用すると、多分女性が9割になると思います。
And so if we were to say, and this is not only the case for Fuji Television, but probably also for all other television stations as well, is if we were going to be looking at hiring or putting people in position just based on their results, then probably women would be in 90% of the position.
ですから多分採用の現場ではもうすでに逆差別というか、ある程度その男性も登用しなくちゃならないということも行われていると思うので、多分クオータ制を導入するまでもないのが多分テレビの現状なんだと思います。特に私が今一緒に仕事をしているフジテレビの報道では本当に優秀なのははっきり言って女性記者です。
And so in regards to the stage of employment, if we're looking at the case of the current situation within the television industry, I think perhaps already considerations are being in place looking at how to make sure that they are also hiring enough men, for example. If we look at the case of where I'm working now at Fuji Television, for example, I believe that it is in particular the female journalists who are really excelling in the field. Thank you.
ですね、今ずっと考えていたんですけれども、この間ある方とお話をしていて、女性の場合は例えばプロモーションを打診しても一度断るんですって。一度断って、でそれをその男性の上司はもう一度背中を押してあげるとやろうかしらっていうふうになるそうなんです。だから私なんかっていう内なる壁というのが女性にはあって、だから女性をただ増やしてもですね、難しいんではないかなと。だからこう増やした上で、男性がその背中を押す、女性のその背中を押して大丈夫だよということを言わないとですね、今の日本の、女性の社会進出っていうのはですね、まだ男社会がこうメインになってますから、やっぱりそういう意味ではクオーターシステムそういうものにさらにプラスアルファでそういう機能を加えれば OK かなと思います。はい。
I've been thinking about this issue as we were discussing, and I was talking to someone the other day on a related issue, and they actually said that in the case of when many women are offered a promotion, they actually first refuse the promotion and say, oh, maybe that's not quite enough for me. But then if a male colleague is able to encourage them to take it, then on the next step they'll say, okay, maybe I will give this a try. And so I believe it's not only an issue of the number of women that we need to be increasing, but also this kind of internal wall or internal obstruction which is in place on this. So not only increasing the numbers through something like a quota system, but also looking at what kind of plus alpha functions we can add to this kind of system to ensure that women can be encouraged to have the confidence to take on these kind of roles. And within the current male-dominated Japanese society, we still need to have these added functions on beyond the numbers to ensure that women can take a full step forward within society.
Thank you. Any more questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Fred Varco from England, freelance. I want to ask you how much do you think the media themselves are guilty of promoting this separation of the sexes within the media? You know, how they encourage maybe young women to lower their expectations, because that's what happens in Japanese life, right? So how guilty is the media of preventing the raising of women in society?
Is it media's fault, do you think?
Well,
Partly.
So, yeah. さっきのちょっとスピーチでも言ったんですけども、メディア自身が女性は可愛くて若い方が、ビュアーズに受けるというふうに思っているのはこれは事実だと思います。それに対して罪の意識を感じているとか責任を感じているとかっていうことについては私はあまりないと思います。
I I did touch on this issue in my speech, but in regards to whether the media itself considers, the role for women or for women to be more appealing to viewers by being cute and young. Of course, this is a fact within the media. But as to whether there is a feeling of responsibility or guilt in regards to this, I don't necessarily feel so.
まあそこが問題だと思います。メディアがそこを感じてない。That's a problem, I think.
It's a problem that you're not feeling this.
I don't feel guilty, but I think media-wise they should feel guilty, and well, I should say whenever you turn on the channel, whenever you turn on the TV. じゃない日本語だ。ごめんなさい。例えば私多分安藤さんもそうですけれど、個人の意識としては要するにキャリアを積んでいくことによってそれを見たいと、要するにそのキャリアを積んでそのスタジオを采配するテクニックですとか、あるいは経験であるとか、あるいはやっぱりいらっしゃるゲストの方だとかと目線を、年がいってる分だけ同じにしたりしてお話を引き出すことが、これがお伺いを立てるっていう形になるとやはり引き出せる話も引き出せなくなるっていうことがあったりして、だからそういう意味での年を重ねるっていうのが実はポジティブに考えないといけないものなんですけど、それを分かっている方は実は大勢いてですね、それはサイレントマジョリティだと思ってます。でサイレントマジョリティっていう方はインターネットで書き込みもしないしツイッターもしないしフェイスブックもしない、だけど分かっている方々で、そういう方々いわゆるサイレントマジョリティのそういう方々に向けて私は仕事をしているつもりなんですね。で当然メディアが罪の意識を感じるべきだというふうに申し上げたのは、やはりアピーリングなのがアピールするのはやっぱり若さでしょっていうなんて言うんでしょう、そういう男性が番組を作っているというこの事実ですね。だからそれは私なんかも中にいてジレンマはもちろんありますけれども、彼らはやっぱり若さで打っていくと視聴率が取れるっていうそういうところで勝負をしているので、多分もう一皮向けるともっと違う世界があると思うんですね。昔のアメリカ例えばマクニール・レイラー・ニューサワーとか渋くてもうサイレントマジョリティが本当に支持するっていうようなそういうものが日本もできてこないといけないというふうに思ってます。
I personally, and I also believe that Ms. Ando probably feels very similar, that of course in the process of building up a career, building the technique, building the experience and expertise, one thing that also becoming older in the field brings is that you're able to work with your guests or your people that you're interviewing on the same level, to be able to look at them and understand and converse on this same level in interviews and so on. And I believe that this can also bring out a certain element within the interviews, within the news, which is very important. And when we look at the audience looking at this, of course, well, the people who are maybe understanding this, like they might not be active online, tweeting on Twitter or making comments on Facebook and so on. But these are the silent majority who understand this and understand this nature of the news. And I'm working within my news reporting for them in a sense. As to the comment about whether media should feel guilt about this, of course, I think the fact that most of the programs are being produced or created by men, and so within this they are of course looking at this appeal of youth, shall we say, and this is in itself a dilemma. Of course they're looking at how ratings can be appealed or how the public appeal can be made through using appeals such as youth and so on. However, in the case of this, I believe that it's not only that fact, but we need to also maybe peel another layer off and look at the next step beyond this, more sides of what this reporting and this news means. If we look at, for example, programs internationally such as the Blair News Hour, which is perhaps supported by such a silent majority who is looking for this kind of element within the news, this is the kind of thing which we also need to have to fill the gap within the Japanese media also.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead, the woman in orange. Go ahead, yes, please.
フリーランスの井上と申します。 現状が今どうなっているかってなんとなく想像はつくんですけれども、私も日本人ですので、今政府が後押しするという動きがあって、今後3年間ぐらいのスパンで何か変化が出てくると思われますか？
To translate the question, I'm a freelancer. My name is Inoue. As a Japanese person, I can somewhat imagine what the current situation of the status quo in this field is. But when we look at the different investment or efforts that are being made in this field, do you think that we will be seeing change in, for example, the next 3 years?
安倍政権が、女性の活用ということを盛んに言ってまして、それこそ3年間で例えば女性の幹部職員を 30% にするということを目標に掲げています。
The Abe administration has made statements about increasing the role of women within society. For example, setting goals of increasing women in leadership positions to 30% in the next 3 years.
ただその安倍政権がこれまでに打ち出してきた政策、女性の子育ての政策とかを見ますと、なんか的が外れている感じがします。
However, when we look at the policies of the Abe administration until now, for example, policies related to child rearing and so on, I believe it's somewhat off target.
それの具体的なものの一つとしては、3年間育児休暇が取れるという政策を打ち出したんですけれども、
And a concrete example of this is the policy suggested to make 3 years of maternity leave.
そのネーミングが3年間抱っこし放題政策というものでした。
And the name of this policy was the 3-year...
抱っこ
Or like 3 years holding the baby.
You can 抱っこ as much as you want for 3 years.
Hold the baby as much as you can for 3 years.
For 3 years. 3年間抱っこし放題ポリシー。でもそれは非常に的が外れていて、3年間抱っこしたい、ずっと子供を抱っこしたいっていうのがお母さんの思いなのか、子供を産んだら一日も早くちゃんと職場に戻れるようなバックアップのシステムを作ってくれるというのが、私たちは働くお母さんの本来の気持ちだと思うんですね。だから3年間抱っこし放題であなたたち嬉しいでしょっていうのは、やはりとても経済的にも恵まれている、環境的にも恵まれている一部のすごくトップのすごく恵まれている女性をターゲットにしている話であって、ちょっと的がずれてるなというふうに思いました。
And so when we look at this policy, I believe it's extremely off target. Is what working women want? Do they really want 3 years to be able to hold their baby as much as they want? Or do they want proper backup systems in place so that they can return to the workplace and continue their careers also? So the policy being put forward is, well, this is what you women want, right? You want to be able to stay at home with your babies. This is very much the perspective of one very small, privileged, economically group within society, which is at the base. And so this is very much missing the target of what the overall Japanese society requires.
その流れから考えますと、あまりその安倍政権が女性活用というふうに言っても、これは女性の問題ではなくて男性の問題だと思うんですね、これは本当に。だからその男性がこれでいいだろうというふうに与える政策とか旗振る政策について、やはり意識が変わらない限りは、私はあまり急速な変化というのはないのではないかと思います。何が私たちにできるかというと、やっぱり一つ一つの壁をブレイクスルーしていくことしかないのかなと思います。急激な3年間ぐらいで変化は残念ながら訪れないというのは、私は非常に悲観的。
So if we look at this trend and we look at, well, if the Abe government is talking about having women being able to play a more active role within this, I believe this is not so much an issue or a problem for women, but for men within society. If we look at, well, men are assuming these policies are okay, the policies which they are holding up as what should be gone forward, what we really need to be looking at is changing the overall awareness or recognition of these kind of issues within society. And if there is not significant change in this aspect, then of course we can break through every individual problem one by one to go forward. But without this kind of change, unfortunately, I'm quite pessimistic about whether we will see any significant change in these 3 years.
私も残念ながら安藤さんと同じ意見で、3年では多分難しいと思うんですね。で、その理由としては、現 今例の103万円の上限で女性が働いた場合にですね、年収、その場合に夫のその扶養控除から外れる外れないで今議論になってますけれども、あの議論でこれだけ時間がかかっちゃってるっていうことで、要するに一つ一つのその点がたくさんあるんですよね。だからいっそのこと第1の矢第2の矢第3の矢のように一気に女性の社会進出のためのパッケージでブレイクスルーできる政策を例えば10個なら10個ダッと出してですね、それをもう1年でやるとかっていうふうにしないとブレイクスルーできないと思います。例えばその扶養控除にして考えてみますと、要するにああいう扶養控除を、なくすあるいはなくさないっていうところの議論というのは非常に現実的ではなくてですね、私も思うのは、例えばなくすんではなくて、例えば女性は例えばですよ、働いて年間103万円よりは稼ぎたいと、103万と130万両方あるんですけど、で要するにそれを超えた上で超えさせたいだから増やしたい。みんな女性は働いてて月々10万よりも20万欲しいわけですよね。だけど結婚は解消しないわけですよ。結婚は解消したくないわけですね。で夫の扶養控除のままでいたいっていう人もいるわけです。だから夫の扶養控除を外れたいっていう人もいる。だからその扶養控除を受けるか外れるかっていうのは選択制にしてあげて、それでかつ例えばリミットをですね、その100万円台にしないで103万とか130万とか言ってないで500万にしてあげるとかっていうことをすればですね、うわーっと今結婚して一旦例えば育児一度はしてたんで仕事辞めましたって言ったような人も戻ってくると思うんですよね。だからそういう非常にその現実的な政策の落とし込み方っていうのをしてないので3人では難しいと思います。はい。
Unfortunately, I am of very much the same opinion as Ms. Andor as to whether we will see any significant change in the next 3 years. The reason for this, to give a concrete example, is, for example, if we look at the current debate on the policy about whether a woman's salary or a woman who is earning more than 1.3 million in their annual salary should be still included under a dependency under the husband within the household, for example. There's so much time being spent on this debate at the moment, on this one point within the whole policy discussion. But we have so many points that we need to be looking forward to. If we're looking at what Mr. Abe is putting forward within his first, second, third hours and so on, if we're spending so much time on this one single point about the dependency allowance or dependency exemption and so on, we need to be looking at not just one point, but 10 points through in 1 year and having a much more rapid progress in this policy debate. And without this, we will not see any particular breakthrough in changes within this policy. And rather than looking at whether we should be getting rid of the exemption and so on, we need to be looking at what is it that women are really wanting within their working. If they're wanting to be working for a higher salary than this 1 million or 1.3, which of course working women are, they're looking for, rather than earning 100,000 yen per month, they would of course prefer a much higher salary than this. We need to be looking at policy which will allow women to have the choice within this as well. If we're looking at the situation of child rearing, for example, policy which will allow children to go back to the workplace if they are wanting to. And these realistic policies with choice included is very much what's needed. So unfortunately without this, I find it very difficult to imagine that there will be significant change in this time frame.
そして先ほどこれも安藤さんと同じなんです。要するに男性が変わらないと絶対変わらないっていうのはそうだと思うんです。で女性がどんなに頑張って社会進出しようと思っても職場の男性の認識はもとより、夫が面白いもので、女性が仕事をしても女性が買い出しをして洗濯をして畳んで食事を作って片付けをしてっていうのは相変わらず日本の場合全部それが日本の女性のデューティーなんですね。でこれをやっぱりシェアするっていうマインドが男性に生まれないといくら社会の方で女性社会進出って言って整備してもですね、いや現実に帰ってみると女性は家帰ったらじゃあやることいっぱいあると寝る時間がないっていう状態を作ってしまうので、その辺も企業が率先して、だから分かんないです、これはもしかすると政府が企業に対してそういうことを何か働きかけをするのか、企業が男性にも例えばそういうものを課すとか、 課すっていうのは、例えば育児休暇であるとか、そういうものも率先して取らないと何か罰金とか極端に言えばですね、あとは、共働きの場合には、ハウスキーパーを日本でも雇えるようなリーズナブルないろんなそのランクはあっていいと思うんですけど、例えばそのハウスキーパーを雇えるようにする。でハウスキーパーで例えばアジアの方から出稼ぎで来てくださるような方々をもっと法務省も法務局ももっとそのビザを出せるようなシステムを作るですとか、あるいはそういう日本でもハウスキーパーを日本人だったら抱えるそういう組織があるのに、日本だとなかなか作りにくいっていう現状があって、そういうものも全部きちんと整備されれば、日本人の女性は喜んで働いてくれると思います。
And another point which I very much share the opinion of Ms. Andor as well is the issue of if men do not change, the whole situation in society will not be able to change either. As much as women themselves can step forward and try to take active roles in society and go forward in the workplace and so on, if this awareness of the role of men does not change, then this will not bring real change. And this is not only talking about men within the workplace as well, but also in the home. If we look at the expectations from husbands, for example, even if women are working full-time hours as a career, they're still expected as the duty of a Japanese woman once they go home to still be responsible for folding the laundry, doing the washing, doing the shopping, doing the cooking, the cleaning. All of these things are also all still part of what is expected of the role of the woman, the duty of the woman. So without men in the households, without husbands also having the mind to be able to share these responsibilities and duties within the home, even if the outside society and the structures and infrastructure is in place to make these changes to allow women to bring a more active role in society, once they go home, the situation, of course, will not be changed, and they will not even have time to sleep within this situation. So one thing that we need to be looking at is what companies or corporations, workplaces can do in this role, and perhaps what governments can do to encourage policies for companies to take these kinds of policies as well. For example, being able to encouraging men to take paternal leave, and not only having the paternal leave in place, but for example, as an idea to give a fine if they don't take their paternal leave, for example. Or another thing also, to make housekeeping services available at reasonable rates so the Japanese families could also use such kind of services. And this could also include, for example, working with the Ministry of Justice to allow visas to be issued for example, women from other Asian countries who are wanting to come to Japan and work in such kind of industries, for example. If we had these kind of different structures in place, then I believe women would be able to much more happily go back to working in the workplace.
Okay, any more questions? Hasegawa-san, dozo. Yeah. Oh, okay, Joel, want to go next.
ラジオ日経の長谷川と申します。クオータ制についての質問なんですけれども、フジテレビは立派な女性人材いることは分かったんですが、例えば頑張ってる女性っていうのは一生懸命やっぱりガラスの天井を突き破ると思って必死になって、上がっていったっていう流れがあったと思うんですが、これクオータ制にした場合はそのモチベーションが薄れる、誰でも幹部になれるのは私そんなにならなくても幹部になれるっていうかね、ちょっとその辺の変化はどういうふうにご覧になるのかっていうのが一つと。からもう一つ、女性がその3割幹部になった場合、何が変わるんですかという、ちょっと素朴な質問なんです。
I am from Radio Nikkei. I would like to ask a question in regards to the quota system again. I understand very well that there are really wonderful women working at Fuji Television, but I believe there is also the trend very much of women maybe feeling they are hitting the ceiling, shall we say. But if we look at if a quota system were to be put in place, would this lead to a weakening in motivation of women, for example? Thinking that, well, anybody can reach these leadership positions, for example, and it's just a matter of numbers. And also, if this system were to be put in place and if 30% of women were in these leadership roles, what do you think would actually change?
クオータ制には反対ですか？反対。
Are you opposed to it? Are you opposed to the quota system? Hasegawa-san? Is you opposed?
No, opposed. 多分すごく難しい問題だと私は思うんですけれども、やはり女性がじゃあなぜこれいろんな方にですね反対にインタビューをしていると言われるんですけれども、女性でも男性でも優秀であればそんなのその性別ジェンダーの問題は関係ないんじゃないかっていうのはよくできる女性が言う よくそういうふうにお答えになるんですね。よくできる女性というのは自分の力でブレイクスルーをしてきたベテランの例えば女性議員とかの方にお話を伺うと、そんなのは女性だろうが男性だろうがきちんとできる人間、資質を持った人間がやればいいんだから、クオーター制っていうのは先ほども言いましたけど逆差別なんじゃないかっていうのは、とても頑張ってきた女性がよく答えでおっしゃることです。
This is, of course, a very difficult question. In my experience in interviewing many people who are also opposed to the idea of a quota system, for example, many people bring about the opinion that, well, if people have certain skills, they have the ability, then gender should be irrelevant. They shouldn't be put in place just for this nature of their gender. And this is also something which I have heard from many women I've interviewed who are in very senior positions, who have themselves, really broke through different barriers and come through to high-level roles and so on. For example, veteran parliamentarian members and so on. And so this, in a sense, their opinion is that this can be a kind of reverse discrimination, as I mentioned before.
ただしそうは言ってもやはりある程度のそのクオータ制を導入してある程度のパーセンテージが女性が入るということは、やはり私は先どういうふうな変化があると思われますかという質問に先に答えますと、やっぱりそれだけ私は多様性が導入されると思うんですね。やはり男性の目から見た物事の見方と、さっきの質問にもありましたけれども、女性の目から見るものの見方っていうのはやはり決定的に私は違いがあるというふうに思います。さっき小谷さんのお話の中でテレビはなぜそんな可愛い若い女の子ばっかりを重用するのかという話の中で男性が作り手のほとんどが男性だからといういわゆる男性目線で作られているもの、これに対しては私も非常にその通りだというふうに思っています。つまりクオーター制を導入することによって女性の目とか見方とか立場とかそういったもの多様性がやはりそこに生まれるということはとても自然なことじゃないかというふうに思います。
However, to a certain extent, also, if we look at bringing your question about what kind of changes would come in place if women were to be in 30% of these places, for example, and I believe this would really introduce a real kind of diversity. And different, of course, I believe that men and women do have very different perspectives on many things. There are definitive differences in the way they look at the world, their views, their perspectives. And so this would bring a real diversity into the field. As Ms. Kohani was mentioning also about why television is putting these young, cute women in the roles in front of the camera. And this is very much to do with the fact that programs are being made by men, as she said. And this means that programs are being made through this male lens, this male perspective. And so what a quota system would do if it were to be brought into place would be bringing a women's perspective into this aspect also, which would bring a kind of diversity, which I believe is a natural step.
もう一つそのモチベーションの話なんですけれども、やっぱりある程度私はその、クオーターシステムのように 30% から 30% 女性が登用されるということがきちっとやはり決められていれば、そこに向かって努力をするというモチベーションは決して下がらないのではないかというふうに思います。
And in regards to the question on motivation, I believe if the quota system were very concretely in place, with a number of 30%, for example, if this was decided and in place, then this would not necessarily lead to a decrease in motivation. Rather, it also gives something to work towards, to work for also.
こうでも今転換点だと思ってます。転換期だと思ってます。つまりこういうことが議論になること自体が転換期だと思ってます。で例えば優秀な女性のパイオニアの方っていうのは数少ないけれどもいらっしゃいます。例えば小畑貞子さんであるとかでそうしますとこう、もちろんそのなんて言うんでしょうね、優秀な方っていうのは男性女性関係ないわけですね。で荒療治って言いますか、今やってることっていうのは荒療治で、それをこう乗り越えないとラビットに要するにその女性が例えばその今交代制だとかなんだってそういうことを、でもやらない限りおそらくそれが普通のことにならない。だからこう日本が女性の登用があまりにも他の国と遅れてるっていうのはやっぱりまだ 女性だからとか女性がなるならないとか、あるいはパーセンテージを本当は置くっていうのは好ましくはないと思いますけれども、そのぐらいでもしない限りそれを乗り越えて普通の状態にできないんだと思うんですよね。でやっぱりその世界のスタンダードでいくと今それが普通なので、だから日本を早くその状態まで持っていくのにその荒療治が私はマストだと思います。
I believe that we are really now at a turning point, and the very fact that these issues are being debated here in Japan is showing that we are at this kind of turning point about going forward. Of course, there are many skilled women within various fields, many pioneers. Of course, there may be few, but very present within various fields in Japan. Of course, we can give the example of Ms. Obata Sadako as a very high-profile pioneer, for example. And skills, regardless of gender, should be acknowledged and should be put to use in the workplace. However, if we don't have these kind of quota or numbers in place at the moment, it will be very difficult for us to make it the norm within Japan for women to be filling these kind of leadership roles. If we look at the situation of women's roles behind compared the situation in Japan and the number of women in these leadership roles compared to the international norms and standards now, we really have a lot of catching up to do. And there is still very much the concept of people using the words such as, oh, well, because you are a woman, or these kind of concepts are very prevalent still within society. Ideally, we should not need to put numbers to this or have this kind of quota in place, but in order to bring us up to these international standards and to actually make it the norm, to make it natural that women are filling these kind of roles, I believe that a quota system is a must to be able to take us there.
Okay, go. Joel?
My name is Joël Lejean. I'm a journalist from the RT, Television and Radio, from France. And I do believe too that the quota doesn't work. After all, in our job, what is important is to have talent and to be professional. But maybe in the 80s, the industry started to change. The ratings started to change everything. You wanted to do something. You wanted to be a journalist. Maybe you wanted to be a journalist. Some people wanted to be someone. You wanted to be someone. So my question is, what did you want to do? To do something, to do press, or to be someone?
ですね、今私はやっぱり夢があって、夢が何かって言いますと、実際にやってることはジャーナリズムです。でジャーナリズムで非常に幸運にもワールドエコノミックフォーラムの IMC インターナショナルメディアカウンシルのメンバーになりました。でそのジャーナリストとしてそこでメンバーになったことで、じゃあ何ができるかっていうのを今考えています。でそうすると、例えばですねアジア地域のなんでしょう、繁栄でしょうか。だからこう経済成長をどうやって日本がそれを一緒になって享受できるか、一緒になって成長させてっていう、でそれをメディアとしての役割っていうのがいっぱい実はあってですね、要するにアジアと日本が間に入っていろんなアジアの国をつなぐっていうことが実はできる。だからこうだからそれがサンワンっていうのはちょっと違うと思うんですよね。ジャーナリズムっていうのはあくまでも黒子であるというふうに思ってます。黒子で徹してて、でも、テレビには顔出さないといけないですけど、実際安藤さんともさっきお話ししたんですけど、私たち普段こう大勢の方々前にしてないでカメラが前にあっているのはみんなファミリーみたいな。今日も実は来てるんですよね。ワールドビジネスサテライトに一緒だった豊島君が今いるんですけど、彼はマーケットキャスターなんですけど、非常に優秀でとても楽しかったです。でだからそういうファミリーがスタジオに一緒にいて番組をやっているという感覚で、どうやっていいものを出していこうかっていうことをあくまでも黒子として、例えば今でしたら私のミッションっていうのは、隣にいらっしゃる山川さんっていう日系の方です。日系新聞の方で毎日日系の大手町のスタジオとライブでお二人必ずその日のニュースのデプス深いところを分析していただいてます。で彼らをもっと前に出てきてもらうようにするにはどうすればいいかと。だから彼らをもっとスタンダードさせた、彼らをサンワンにするためにはどうすればいいかを考えています。 だからそういうファンクションが自分には、課せられているっていうふうに思っているので、だからそのジャーナリストでもサンマンでもないですね。だからそのどうやって日本のメディアがプレゼンスを持って、かつそれがアジアに大きく貢献できて世界にも貢献できるかということを常に考えている、それだけですね。そこにつきます。
Thank you very much for the question. I have a dream at the moment, which I would like to introduce. Of course, I'm working in the field of journalism. And within business journalism, for example, I have been, we are lucky to be a member of the International Media Council for the WMF, for example. Sorry, WEF. And so what can we do within this role, for example? And I believe what we should be looking at, what we can do within this journalism as a role, is how Japan can contribute to the Asian region coming together to work for joint economic growth or joint prosperity, and what kind of role Japan can play in this to work for this growth, and the very significant and large role which the Japanese media can play within this as well. Japan has the potential to really be able to bring these different Asian countries together. And so if I look at this as my particular dream, or what I'm aiming for, shall we say, I believe it's not so much looking at becoming someone, as in the question. But really, my belief is that journalism is something which, it's not about becoming someone, but it's something which is in the background, shall we say. And of course, you have to be on camera to be telling these stories, to be doing the work. However, really, it's about also what's behind the stories, the background, and bringing this all together. Today, we have also present in the room here a market analyst who I work very closely with, and also Hannah coming here, for example, who we are always interviewing within our daily reports and so on, really working together to see how we can make a program together as a family to bring this analysis, to bring these stories, and how this can contribute together. And I believe what's very important is how to bring people like them forward, to bring their analysis forward, to be able to bring that to the forefront as well, to make them someone, shall we say. And I believe my role as a journalist is to be able to contribute to that in a way. So looking at journalism, not so much as being or creating being someone, but how the presence of the Japanese media and what we can do can contribute to working for a better Asia and a better world together in this aspect also.
I have a very small dream compared to Kotani-san's dream. As I mentioned in my speech, I'm age of 55, and it's kind of hard to be surviving in the TV media in Japan. And I'm no longer kawaii, or I'm no longer young. So what I want to do from now on is how many more years I can be surviving the living in the TV media as kind of in Japanese it's otsubone. What do you say in English? Otsubone. It's not otsubo. Otsubone. It's what? Boss, queen. So it's quite experimental in the Japanese TV media. And just like Barbara Waters, how old is she? 80 something, right? 70 something. I'm going to go over, Barbara Waters maybe over 80, and you can turn on the TV and I'll be there. Thank you.
Okay, oh, sorry, I didn't say it. Go ahead. Did you want to ask? Yeah, please.
Hello, I'm Kamini Singh. I'm with NH Cable Radio Japan. I'm freelance. Well, I'm not here to ask questions, but to say something about, because I come from India, and in India, at the grassroots level, we have 33% reservations for women. Yes, and it is like, because India being a very conservative, traditional country still, I think it's a very good beginning for women at the local levels. But at the same time, it's like...
Do you have a courses?
Yes, at the grassroots levels. It's a very good thing, just to begin with, because before their husbands used to contest elections and do things for everybody. And now they're bringing their wives and their daughters out and they're doing things, but at least people are recognizing women, and it's a very good thing, so thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for that comment. Okay, go ahead, yeah. Sorry, we're still the media questions is still working press. Not yet. He's going to ask a question, and why don't you ask the question after that?
Hi, I'm Andy Klein with WCN-TV. I actually have something similar to the grassroots that was just discussed. It sounds like it's a very top-down approach in Japan for change, and that seldom happens with suffrage movements, civil rights movements. So what kind of participation and action is needed on the ground grassroots level, and what can men specifically do to help equality in Japan?
I think my answer is quite simple. There is a problem of mothers. Mother loves their son, right? And taking care of too much of their son. I think that's the root. I think that's a starting point. The man is kind of spoiled.そう、お母さんがあまりにも息子を大事にして何でもかんでも世話を焼いてあげることがやはり日本のすごくお母さんのいいところでもあるし、やはり息子をこうスポイルしてしまうところがあって、それはやはり男の子は、厨房に入ってはいけない、キッチンに入ってはいけないというふうに教えられたりしてきたわけです。やっぱりそういうところのがすごくシンプルな部分なんですけれども、グラスルーツという以前の問題ですが、そういう家の中の意識っていうものをやっぱり変えていくのがまずは私は大事なんじゃないかというふうに思います。
And so the way that Japanese mothers are treating their sons in such a precious way, wanting to do everything for their sons. Of course, this can be said to be, a positive side of Japanese mothers, but at the same time, it also really results in spoiling of these sons as well. For example, mothers saying, "Oh, boys are not allowed in the kitchen," for example. These are very simple things, but I think it goes even at a more ground level than even the grassroots level that we were discussing. And without looking at making these changes within the home, it will be very difficult to make these kind of changes within society also.
今の安藤さんのでティップが2つ具体的なお話しさせていただきますと、この間品川女子学園の漆校長にお会いした時に、今の母親と息子の関係で、特に日本の場合は、男の子が寮に入っているとそこに掃除に行くお母さんがいると。それで絶対にその男の子とは結婚してはいけませんよっていうふうに品川女子学園では教育してるって言うんですね。そんなね、お母さんが掃除に来るような男性は絶対に結婚してもいいことないって、そういうだから女性のそのマインドをずっとこう教えてらして、で彼女たちはもう28歳目標っていうので、28歳までにとにかく子供を産む、キャリアを積むってことを教育してるんですね。で品川女子学園の女性たちは非常に賢くて強くてですね、でもう校長先生に対して何て言ったかって、ある日何て言ったかっていうと、校長先生もう私たちはいいから男子校に行って男子を教育してきてるっていうぐらいの感じなんですけども、でもう一つはですね、日産のゴーン社長に、私がこれ何年前だったかはちょっと忘れましたけど、食事ご一緒してた時にゴーンさんねって、私女性っていうのはやっぱり例えば結婚して家事をして家庭を守る、で子供を生まれれば産んで育てるっていう、やっぱりこう男性と女性のファンクションの役割の違いがあるので、やっぱりそれでいくべきではないかと思うって言ったら、君古いよって言われてその考え方絶対古いから変えなさいっていうのが 7,8 年前で、そっから一生懸命自分の自己改革をしてですね、間違ってるっていうので、やっぱり私自身も結婚したらやっぱりこう仕事をしながら家の中完璧にしないといけないっていう、でそれでもう自分の首絞めていくわけですね。だからやっぱりこう男の子の感覚も変えていかないといけない。日本人の男性のやっぱり厨房にも入る、 家事もするということを若い頃から教えて、お母さんの助けは借りないで、女の子でやっぱりどうやって突き放すか、男性を突き放していくかで、あるいは優しくでもこう一緒になって家事をやってもらうように誘導するようにできるかという、その辺を今の若い人たちにはもうグラスルートレベルか分かりませんけれども教えていくことで、次の世代がどんどん変わっていくっていうふうにしか、今の人たちも固まっちゃってるんでね、変えようがないようにも思うんですけど、まあでも私みたいに 7,8 年かければ変わりますので、やっぱりそういうのを解いていく、やっぱりそういうもんなんじゃないかと。今世界でもそうだけど、日本でもやっぱりもうこれだけ少子高齢化が進んで、もう女性の力が必要になってくると、男性も今までみたいに仕事一本やりで行くわけにいかないんだよっていう、なんかやっぱりメディアも含めてそういう啓蒙活動っていうのが必要だと思います。
Listening to Ms. Andor's comments there also gave me some tips for 2 concrete points which I would like to mention. I had an opportunity to be recently speaking with the principal of the Shinagawa Girls College, Principal Bruce, and looking at this, we were talking about the relationship between mothers and sons in Japan, and was actually talking about the case of male students who are even living in a dormitory whose mothers actually come to the dormitory to clean their dormitories for them. And one thing that this girls' college was teaching its students there is never marry a boy from a family like this, or never marry this kind of man. This school is putting forward a goal of the age of 28 for its students, saying by 28 you should be looking at making a family but also making a career for yourself as well. It's a very strong, very clever education for the women there, but at the same time, one of the things which the female students are telling the principals, we know this, you shouldn't be telling this to us, but go to the boys' schools and be teaching this to the boys at their colleges also. Another anecdote which I would like to share with you is around 7 or 8 years ago I had an opportunity to be having dinner or a meal with the president of Nissan. And at this time I was saying, looking at the situation of women once they marry, of course if they're continuing a career still, they are also needing to be able to look after the housework and keep the home in order and so on as well. And these are the different, I was saying that these are the different functions of men and women in society. And I was told very clearly, that kind of way of thinking, it's very old. You need to change that. This is something which was 7 or 8 years ago when we had this discussion. And so since then, I went back and was thinking, well, okay, if this is wrong, if this is an old way of thinking, how do we shift this? How do we make this change? And looking at the real pressures which are on women, thinking that if they're working in the workplace, they need to also still be able to manage everything perfectly at home. And this puts such a lot of pressure on women themselves as well. So while we need to make changes in men within society, encouraging them also to go into the kitchen, from young boys to be helping their mother at home, for example, we also need to be looking at what we can do for women within Japanese society as well, educating women so that they can also encourage their husbands, for example, to be working together in the home, to be helping with housework and so on as well. I'm not sure this addresses the question of the grassroots level, for example, but these kind of teaching in the homes and teaching our children about this kind of thing will really be able to bring changes around in the next generation, I believe. And if we look at even the changes, for example, between that conversation 7 or 8 years ago and myself even now, I really think that this shows that this kind of change is possible. So we need to look at how we can slowly break down these different factors. And if we look at what's happening internationally and around the world, and of course here in Japan with the decreasing birth rate as well, the role of men and women within society is going to be changing. Women are going to be having to be more active in the workplace, and men at the same time are going to have to be more active in other roles rather than just the traditional company role. And the media also has a responsibility to also be advocating or sharing information about this kind of trends also.
Okay, please, go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sally Wong, and I come from Hong Kong. Well, actually, before I came to Tokyo, I worked a few years on women issues in Hong Kong. Perhaps I can share a few observations with you here. Well, first of all, I must say that to motivate women to participate more actively in society, the presence of role models like yourselves is very important, because for young women, how do they form their aspirations? How do they look to the future? They look at the top women figures in society. And I think the women here on this table are very prominent figures in Japanese society. So, ganbatte. I think a lot of young women will look to you for inspiration. And looking wider, Somebody mentioned about setting a quota. In Hong Kong, for some years we resisted the idea of any quotas. But then about 10 years ago, we started to lay down some sort of target. We don't say it's a quota. We have a target for women's participation in government's advisory boards and committees. Well, although women work very actively, even after marriage and even after childbirth, a lot of them hesitate in joining some sort of voluntary work in the form of participating in government advisory boards and committees. And the figure was quite low at the beginning. In the year about 2000, there were less than 20% women on these boards and committees. And the Women's Commission was set up by the government to improve the status and opportunities for women in society. And it was decided that there should be a target of 25% of women participation. So there was a gap of 5.7% to cover. And we reached that target a few years later. And then we increased the target to 30%, I think about a couple of years ago. And now I think we have already reached the target. And people are thinking whether we can move it further still. And it's not just grabbing any women, make them sit on the boards. It's really about cultivating women and also reaching out to scout for more women. Because if you just sit in your office and you look at your database and it's so narrow, and you can't find enough women. So the thing is really you have to reach out to find more women. A lot of them are interested, but they don't know how to start. So setting a target somehow helps people to focus their minds. So I would suggest doing it.
Did you want to ask them a specific question? Or
yes.
Did you have a question?
To share some experience.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, please. I think this is going to have to be the last question.
Mitsuya Goto. I'm a lifelong businessman who has been coming to this club since 1969. When I was asked to join Nissan Motor Company, and I had the experience of dealing with Mr. Thatcher, who used to say, I was toughened up by the Iron Lady. She used to say, during her reign as Prime Minister, 11 years, she exhausted 7 Japanese Prime Ministers. But anyway, I have always been a great admirer of Malcolm. But I never had a chance to meet. The question I want to ask is how you, both women, have been able to hone up your presentation skills in Japanese and English. I want to know your educational background because I, for one, major in speech at a small liberal arts college in Indiana called Wabash College. And Wabash had for 40 years America's best known speech professor. So I majored in speech and I graduated.
Okay, well, thank you so much. Yeah,
anyway,
thank you.
I want to ask
We're going to wrap it up pretty soon. Thank you so much for your question. Well, yeah, your English has been incredibly important in your careers, right?
Right.
Yeah.
簡単にじゃあ、エデュケーションバックグラウンドするのなんで、すごくメイキングショーです。高校時代に私はアメリカのミシガン州にの AFS unfortunately 違うプログラムなんですけれども留学をしておりました。で、その時にスピーチのクラスというのが必修科目だってすごい大変な思いをしたことを覚えております。でも表現のスキルをどうやって学んだかというご質問なんですけれども、多分日本のその教育のシステムの中には何かを表現するということをあまり教える機会がないというふうに思うんです。むしろ私はこの表現をするとか人に何かを伝えるということを学んだのはこの仕事を始めてから で、どうやったら自分が伝えることを人様によりよく分かっていただくかという工夫をするようになったのはこの仕事を始めてからなので、どうも教育の過程で表現するということを学んだのはたった1回だけ留学中のアメリカのクラスでスピーチのクラスだけだったというふうに記憶しております。
So I would like to very briefly respond to this question. Of course, my entire background has a very long story behind it. When I was a high school student, I had the opportunity to participate in a student exchange program to the state of Michigan in the United States. And at this time, there was a compulsory class on speech and presentation, and I have memories of this being very challenging and difficult at the time. But I believe within the Japanese education system, there's not so many opportunities to learn about presentation or expression skills and so on. So in my case, other than this one class which I took in the United States, it was really very much on the job, which I learned my presentation and expression skills, and really on the job thinking about how to convey messages to people, how to reach the audience, and this message and this kind of experience was really what honed my skills in this field.
I still feel like I don't have skills. 日本語でやっぱりキャリアを通してインタビューされる側っていうよりもインタビューする側として相手の方がどうすれば素を出してくださるか、でそれを考えてずっとこの仕事を20何年やってきて、ですね。だからそこにつきますね。ですからで特にテレビの世界の場合は安藤さんもそうでいらっしゃると思うんですけど、起承転結できるだけ短くで言わないといけない。かつ起承転結の結論の方から先に言っていって、むしろその後の初めの3つを、逆にこう伝えていく。で場合によってはその、起承転結の結を一番初めに言ったら後の3つは、いつでもこう時間が来るとこうそぎ落とせるように、時間が来たらここはもう切れるようにするために結論を先に言うというその訓練がやっぱりそのキャリアを通して培われたのかなっていうふうに思いますね。はい、だからあんまりそのうまくはないです。すいません。
I also, very similar to Ms. Ando, really feel that it was through my career and through on the job where I was able to hone these skills, really working as an interviewer rather than as someone being interviewed, but thinking about how to bring out the responses from the people that you're interviewing, how to make them at ease and bring different conversation through that. And over the more than 20 years in my career, this is something which, of course, on the field, really very much working on this skill. And also within the television field, and this is of course the same for Ms. Ando, it's really very important about clarity, precision, and also how to say what you're trying to say very brilliantly and very clearly. And looking at the order in which you're bringing your arguments to the point. You're bringing the conclusion first, and then how you're developing the interview and the question and the arguments. The conclusion from there is something which really very much learned through experience, actually on the job as part of the career.
Okay, I think we're very unfortunate we're going to have to wrap this up, but we could probably go on for another hour or two. First, so thank you both so very much for coming today. We really appreciate it. What I'd like to do is what we do traditionally is give each of you a honorary, one-year honorary membership to the club.
Wow.
So please come again.
I look forward to this.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes. All right.
We both have been dreaming this for years and years.
Oh, thank
Actually,
you.
I mean, you have to be correspondent for like a couple of years.
At least.
Yeah. Well, welcome. Please come as many times as you can. We'd love to have you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you
very much.